diving into this book, Stacy Park's Insider's Guide to Independent Film Distribution has been, well, kind of like that feeling when you go to film school, all those expectations, all that excitement, and then bam, reality hit.
Right. It's like, welcome to the film industry. We're not making Clerks in our parents' basement anymore.
Exactly. And this book, even though it's from 2012, it really lays bare how much the game has changed, especially for indie filmmakers.
Yeah, 2012 might feel like ancient history in internet years, but so much of what she talks about is even more relevant now. Like, remember those indie films success stories from the 90s? Everyone wants that Sundance Changed My Life fairy tale.
Right, but that was a whole different world. This book, it's like that friend who gently tells you, that party ended hours ago.
Yeah. Back then, fewer indie films were being made. Distributors, they were willing to take bigger risks, offer those big advances. It was like, we believe in this film, let's make a splash.
But now it feels like everyone and their GoPro has a film.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming, even for viewers.
Exactly, and that's a key takeaway. The digital revolution, streaming, it's a double-edged sword. More opportunities, sure, but also way more competition. So that whole idea of getting a big, fat distribution advance, yeah, Parks basically says, don't hold your breath.
She even quotes Betsy Chass, this big-time producer, who says those upfront checks are as common as, like, finding a unicorn at a film festival.
And Chass should know, even she was feeling the squeeze back then, and that was before streaming really blew up. It's like trying to sell a single song when everyone's used to getting unlimited music streaming.
So what's an indie filmmaker with a shoestring budget to do? Just give up and become a TikTok influencer?
Not so fast. Parks gives some really solid advice. Like, she stresses making films that are, how did she put it, rewatchable, something people want to watch again and again. Think about it in the age of streaming. That's gold.
It's like the shift from selling albums to building a fan base. You want people streaming your music, watching your film on repeat. It's about that long-term connection.
Exactly. And just as crucial, she says, keep it cheap. The less debt you're in, the more creative freedom you have.
That changes everything. It's not just about making a good film. It's about making a film that resonates, that has legs, and doing it without breaking the bank.
Right. It's like she's saying, be smart, be strategic, and for the love of all that is indie, don't blow your budget on craft services.
Which brings us to her pre-production power moves.
Yeah.
It's like she's saying, forget waiting for the green light. You got to start building your audience now.
And this is where most filmmakers, they trip up. They think marketing is something you worry about after the film is done. Big mistake. She gives this example of a filmmaker who used, get this, Facebook to cast, scout locations, even get feedback on the script, all on a shoestring budget.
Talk about resourceful. It's like turning your pre-production into this whole online event. Why isn't everyone doing this?
Because it takes effort. Building that buzz, engaging with people, it's a lot of work. But the payoff, huge. By the time your film's ready, you've got a built-in audience, folks who are already invested.
So you've poured your heart and soul, not to mention your ramen noodle budget, into this awesome indie film. Now what? You've got this built-in online community, but how do you actually get it in front of eyeballs?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And Parks, she doesn't sugarcoat it. The traditional distribution game, yeah, it's still there, but it's a whole different beast now.
It's like trying to hail a cab in a downpour during rush hour while everyone's ordering Ubers on their phones.
Pretty much. But Parks, she's got this whole section on what she calls the direct distribution revolution. It's like, forget waiting for the gatekeepers to let you in, build your own damn gate.
I like the sound of that. So it's about taking control, cutting out the middleman, keeping more of the profit.
Exactly. It's about connecting directly with your audience on your own terms. And she's got some pretty inspiring examples, filmmakers who've made it work, like Doug Block. Ever heard of him?
Rings a bell, indie film scene.
Yeah, he made this doc, The Kids Grow Up, and he actually turned a profit going the DIY route.
Wait, a profit? That's practically unheard of, even with a studio backing you. How'd he swing that?
Smart guy. He did a limited theatrical run, sure, but he really focused on building that online presence. It's like Park says, you got to be proactive, engage with your audience, meet them where they are.
It's like the difference between setting up a lemonade stand and hoping people wander by versus, I don't know, sending out a tweet like, free lemonade, come get it.
Exactly. And that's what Block did. He was active on social media, did Q&As, built that word-of-mouth buzz. He wasn't just waiting for people to find him. He was out there hustling.
So does that mean traditional distributors are totally out of the picture now?
Not necessarily. Even in this whole DIY landscape, Parks talks about how Partnerships are still key. Like, you don't have to do everything yourself. You can partner with companies that specialize in, say, marketing or getting onto those VOD platforms, all that stuff.
So it's like, even if you're going indie, you still need a good team, people who know the ropes.
Exactly. It's about playing to your strengths. And she mentions this company, Filmart Media. They've had a lot of success with this hybrid model, blending their own in-house distribution with strategic partnerships.
Hybrid model, huh? So indie spirit, but with like a business savvy twist.
That's a great way to put it. And it speaks to this bigger shift that Parks talks about, redefining what success even means in this new landscape. It's not just about the blockbuster opening weekend anymore.
Right. It's about longevity, building a connection with your audience that lasts.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, slow and steady wins the race. Okay, maybe not that slow, but you get the idea.
Okay, so we've got to talk about VOD, the elephant in the room, or should I say the streaming giant on our screens. Everyone's streaming everything these days.
Right. And Parks calls it the new frontier. But she also warns it's not as simple as just uploading your film and watching the views roll in.
There's a strategy to it, just like with everything else.
Totally. First off, you've got different types of VOD. Parks breaks it down transactional, where you rent individual films, subscription, think Netflix or Hulu, and ad-supported, which is free with commercials.
So knowing your film and your target audience is key, right? Like a gritty documentary is going to find a different home than, say, a rom-com.
You got it. You wouldn't put a country music album on a heavy metal playlist, right? Same idea.
Makes sense. So how do you even navigate this VOD world? It sounds kind of overwhelming.
Well, that's where aggregators come in. They're like your VOD distributors. They help you get your film onto those platforms, deal with all the technical stuff, even negotiate with the big players sometimes.
So finding the right aggregator is key. They're like your VOD wingman.
Exactly. And just like with anything else, not all aggregators are created equal. You want someone who gets your film, who has a good track record, who's not going to stick you on some obscure platform nobody's ever heard of.
Right. You don't want your film ending up in the internet equivalent of the bargain bin.
Hmm.
So even in this brave new world of indie filmmaking, there's still a lot of, well, business involved.
Oh, yeah. It's easy to get swept up in the creative side, but Parks, she reminds us that this is still a business, and understanding the nuts and bolts is crucial.
So let's talk about that. She goes into contracts, negotiations, all the stuff that makes my eyes glaze over a little.
Yeah, the legal stuff can be a bit daunting, but she breaks it down really well. Like, she talks about distributor expenses.
Okay, so that's like, what? The cost of actually getting the film out there.
Right, things like marketing, making those screening copies, all that. And Parks stresses that filmmakers, they need to understand these costs because they often get deducted from any profits before the filmmaker sees a dime.
Wait, seriously? So you could make a hit, but if the distributor expenses are sky high, you end up with, what, an empty popcorn bucket?
That's the worst case scenario, and it happens. That's why Parks says, know your numbers, negotiate those contracts carefully. And speaking of contracts, she's got a whole chapter on rights carve-outs.
Rights carve-outs. Sounds kind of scary, like something you'd see in a horror film.
It's not that bad, but it is important. It's basically about which rights you're giving the distributor. Like, are they getting the rights for all territories, all platforms, or just specific ones?
So you might want to hold on to, say, the streaming rights for certain countries if you think you can get a better deal later on. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It's about thinking strategically, playing the long game, and then, of course, there are deliverables. These are the materials you need to provide to the distributor.
Okay, so that's like high-quality film files, marketing materials, all that jazz.
Exactly. And if you're not careful, those deliverables can trip you up. Like, what if you didn't get the right music clearances or your film files aren't up to snuff?
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be. That's why Park says having a good lawyer is crucial. Someone who understands the indie film world and can help you navigate all this stuff.
So even though it's the age of YouTube and everyone being able to make a film on their phone, having a good entertainment lawyer is still essential.
Absolutely. Think of them like your co-pilot, helping you navigate this crazy, ever-changing world of indie filmmaking.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, going indie, building an audience, navigating the wild world of VOD. But what about film festivals? Those are still a big deal, right?
Oh, absolutely. Film festivals, they're like the Super Bowl, the Olympics, and Comic-Con all rolled into one, at least for the film world. But Parks, she's got a whole chapter on how to approach festivals strategically, and it's not just about submitting your film and hoping for the best.
Because not all festivals are created equal, right? Like,
Yeah.
winning a prize at Sundance is a bit different from, I don't know, getting an honorable mention at a local film fest.
Exactly. Parks, she breaks it down into tiers. With the
Oh.
top tier festivals, those are your Sundance, your Cannes, your Toronto. Those are the ones that can really launch a film, attract those big distributors, get you on the radar.
The ones with the red carpets and the paparazzi and, well, the potential for those life-changing distribution deals.
Exactly. But then you've got your second tier festivals, and those are still important. They might not have the same glitz and glam, but they can help you build buzz, get some press, connect with the right people.
It's like choosing the right battle to fight,
Mhm.
right? We want to make sure your film is playing in front of the right audience.
Precisely. Parks compares it to choosing the right target market. Like if you're selling, I don't know, vegan ice cream, you wouldn't set up shop at a barbecue festival, would you? You'd go where the vegan ice cream lovers are.
Makes sense. So how do you even begin to navigate the festival world? It
Yeah.
seems like you need a whole strategy just to figure out which festivals to even submit to.
Right. And Parks breaks down some key things to consider, like what's the festival's reputation? What kind of films do they tend to program? Do they require a world premiere, or are they open to films that have already screened elsewhere?
It's like figuring out if you need to bring a fancy bottle of wine to the party or if a six-pack will do.
Exactly. And then there's the whole application process itself. Parks talks about the importance of a strong screener, a compelling synopsis, a director's statement that doesn't sound like it was written by, well, you know.
A pretentious film student who just discovered Fellini.
You got it. You want your materials to stand out, to grab their attention.
It's like your film's dating profile. You want to put your best foot forward.
And don't forget the trailer. The trailer is everything.
It's like the movie equivalent of a first date. If it's a snooze fest, you're not getting a second chance.
And even if you do get accepted into a festival, the work doesn't stop there. Parks talks about the importance of having a game plan, like booking your travel, scheduling those screenings, figuring out your networking strategy.
Because a festival isn't just about going to parties and drinking free champagne.
Well, it's not about that, but you also want to make the most of the opportunity, right?
So treat it like a business trip, not just a vacation.
Exactly. You're there to connect with people, to get your film in front of the right eyeballs. And Parks, she's got some great tips on how to do that, how to work the room, how to follow up with people, all that good stuff.
So even if you don't walk away with a distribution deal, a festival can still be a valuable experience.
Absolutely. It's about building relationships, getting your name out there, maybe even getting inspired by other filmmakers.
And who knows, you might even make some new film nerd friends along the way.
Exactly. It's all part of the journey. And speaking of journeys, we've come to the end of ours, at least for this deep dive into Stacy Parks' Insider's Guide to Independent Film Distribution.
It's been quite a ride. So what are the key things we want our listeners to remember, even if they forget everything else?
First off, the indie film world, it's constantly changing, so adaptability is key. What worked 5 years ago might not work today, so you got to be willing to roll with the punches.
It's like surfing, got to ride those waves.
Exactly. Second, know your audience. Who are you making this film for? What do they want to see? Where do they hang out online? Answer those questions, and you're already ahead of the game.
And never, ever underestimate the power of a good spreadsheet.
Hey, organization is key. But seriously, what it all comes down to is this. If you're passionate about making films, don't let anything stop you. The industry might be tough, but it's also full of incredible stories waiting to be told.
Beautifully said. So to all you aspiring Spielbergs and Ava DuVernays out there, keep dreaming, keep creating, and most importantly, keep sharing those stories with the world.
Because the world needs more great films, and who knows, maybe yours will be the next indie darling to take the festival circuit by storm.
And on that inspiring note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, happy filmmaking, and as always, keep diving deep.